Hi, my name is Cal Wansborough. My company is Yoga and the Big Smoke. I teach a lot of yin yoga, and yin is a long, slow practice, mainly on the ground. So this class is about the hips, opening up through the back, side, front of the hips, using a variety of different poses. So if you can get into Dragon Lunge. So Dragon Lunge is a pose which stretches the hip flexors. So it's the front of the thigh, and you're going to bring your right foot forward. And then we've got three people here, so three different bodies. And there's an option. You can either come really, really high up and use blocks. So Elaine here is using some blocks, and she's winging her right knee wide out so she gets a nice stretch through the front of her left hip. Lizzie, can you come down for a minute, right down onto your forearms? So the other option is that sometimes it's really helpful to come all the way down on your forearms. You just got to be a little bit careful of compression at the front of your right hip. So if you feel compression at the front of right hip, is that all right for you, Lizzie? Yeah. And then she gets a nice stretch. She can also come all the way up and then bend the left knee, and then she creates also a nice stretch. So you can either bend the left knee, you can either bring your left hand down and right hand behind you and do it that way. So she's also getting a nice stretch now through the front of her left hip and her left quadricep. And Javier is just using his hands rather than blocks, so he doesn't have to come high up, and still getting a nice stretch through the front of the left hip. So we're going to be holding this Dragon Lunge for about 3 minutes. And as you stay in the pose, you can maybe move a little bit. So you don't have to stay rigidly in the pose. Maybe you can move a little bit to get a little bit more comfortable. You can maybe release that left foot if you feel it's coming too strong. You can bring the right knee out a little bit, and then you can also come down onto your forearm. So you can change the pose when you're in it. It's not essential to feel that you have to stay there. And yin yoga, we are working more on the meridian lines of the body as well. So it's based on the philosophy of Chinese medicine, and as well as physically opening up the body and unraveling the tissues of the body, we're also working energy through the meridian lines. So this pose, we're working specifically on the stomach and spleen meridian. Each meridian line has a mental quality, a physical quality, and an energetic quality to it. So spleen and stomach is really about the digestive system, and it helps to move through food through the digestive system. Spleen and stomach, if we move the energy through, it helps with assimilation of food. It helps with bringing energy in terms of food to the parts of the body that need it. So we're just coming up to the last few seconds. And then we're going to move over to the other side. So just coming really slowly out of the pose. You want to really take your time coming out of the poses, there's no hurry. And then moving to the other side. So being really mindful as well is that the left and right side of the body is different. So you might want to take a slightly different pose. Sometimes that right knee the right knee down on the floor can be a little bit painful, so you might want to take something underneath it. Do you want something underneath it, Elaine? I don't know if that helps, but... And then again, so Elaine's choosing to use the block so that she's a little bit higher up, so you can get the access to the front of the right hip. The left knee is winging right out, so she can access that hip, and this really stops her getting compression through the front of the left hip. So compression is when bone hits bone, and you can get a lot of compression through the front of the hips. And this is particularly in the hip opener pose, where like Dragon Lunge, and also we're going to come onto half pigeon, that you really want to try and avoid that compression. Lizzie again is choosing to take her right foot up, so she's getting a really nice stretch through the front of the right hip, And then also, as she bends the right knee back, she's going to start to get a stretch through the quadricep as well. So you're getting it a little bit through the front of the right thigh as well. And then Javier, again, choosing just to come down on your hands. You don't want to block or anything, Javier? You don't want to block? Okay, good. So just being really mindful. Some people have really different left and right sides of the body. So you want to really land the pose into your body and not your body into the pose. So you're constantly in yin, listening out for your body and feeling into it. And really, it's mainly so important. You can see here there's 3 different bodies and they're all in slightly different poses. They all look slightly different. So the importance for yin is not so much about how it looks, it's much more about the function of the pose. So you want to feel a nice stretch in the front of your right hip, and it doesn't matter what it looks like. And yin, we're using what I like to term as yin breath. So it's not a controlled breath, it's just a gentle flow in and out, inhale and exhale of your breath. You're not trying to create any control. And we're just coming up to the last few seconds in Dragon. And now very slowly we're going to move into half pigeon or sleeping swan. So sleeping swan. So let's do sleeping swan on the right side. So you can come from sleeping swan either onto your hands and your knees, or you can come from a downward facing dog. And Javier is going to do it on his back. So this is one option as he comes onto his back. You kind of want to feel that you're really nicely relaxed. So if you come onto your back, you're going to bring your right ankle over your left knee, and you can take your hands around the back of the left thigh or from the front of the left knee. And you're still getting a really nice stretch. The half pigeon or sleeping swan, where you want to get a really nice stretch through the back right butt cheek. So you do feel it through there. Great. Lizzie is choosing just to do, this looks probably the most classic sleeping swan. She's got her right foot a little bit down underneath her left hip, and her pelvis is really level. You can see with Elaine, the pelvis is slanted, so we're going to come on to Elaine in a while. And then Lizzie's just got her head rested down onto the mat, so she feels really nice and relaxed, and she's getting a really nice stretch through the back of the right hip. So we're stretching now through the back of the right glutes and the rotator muscles. And then coming on to, actually, Lizzie, do you want to block underneath your head? Or you? And then coming now onto Elaine. So Elaine has actually got a really slanted pelvis. So you can see that the slant of the pelvis is like this, and she's choosing to sit right down onto that right butt cheek. So this means that she comes into, so sleeping swan is a combination of external rotation of the hip and then flexion of the hip. And she's choosing to come into more external rotation, fold herself forward. Her right foot is right up here, so her shin is parallel to the front of the mat, whereas Lizzie's foot is right down here. And then the pelvis therefore comes a little bit flatter. And she's got a nice stretch through here. Do you want to have a block underneath your head, Elaine, or not really? And then here the back leg is obviously, because of the slant of her pelvis, obviously externally this comes out a little bit, and is because the pelvis is not flat, the leg comes out, and there's a little bend in her left knee. But that's fine. You know, you're nice and comfortable, aren't you, Elaine? And she's got a really nice stretch through the back of the right hip. Equally, this pose really works for Lizzie. She's really nice and comfortable, and she's got a nice stretch. So you're really working with two very different bodies and two fairly different poses, and how, in terms of how they look, but you're still getting that nice stretch. So sleeping swan, again, 3 different variations. And sometimes it's really nice to come and do variation on your back. It's just a different option, it's a slightly different stretch. And then notice in your sleeping swan that you kind of want to relax the shoulders. So you want to soften a little bit through the shoulders and soften through the jaw. Always being conscious of removing the tension from your body. So in this particular pose, we're working on the liver and gallbladder meridian. So that comes on the lateral side of the legs. And liver and gallbladder is all about the energy of creativity, the energy of spring. We've got spring at the moment, so that energy that harnesses spring, and it's all a little bit about change. It's the energy that bud comes into a flower, so that's that really powerful, strong energy. And the liver gives us the ability to push forward, find our direction, have our vision. And now just the last few minutes of this pose, seconds of this pose. And now slowly you're going to come out and come onto the other side. So again, always making your transitions really nice and slow. And then making your way onto the other side. So however you come, maybe your transition is downward facing dog. Javier's just going to stay on his back. And we're going to come onto the left side. I'm just going to bring a block under your head, so that more comfortable with the block underneath your head. So always in half pigeon, you're looking to, in any of our yin poses, you're looking to find the stretch, but you really want to be as comfortable as possible. So any props that can serve you, like a block to lift your head up, and maybe sometimes it's nice to have a strap as well. So you can sometimes take a strap in this pose here, that you can bring a strap if you can't quite get your hands around your back of your right knee. You can take a strap to assist you. And it's always, if that doesn't work for you, then don't worry, I'm just trying to show. So comfort is the most important thing in yin, as in you want to be comfortable, so when you're comfortable, you relax into the pose. And then when you relax into the pose, you stretch a little bit further than the muscle and come into the connective tissue or the fascia of the body, and that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to open up through the fascia. And fascia requires long, held, slow, passive stretches. Muscle, we want to have dynamic, repetitive motion. It's a little bit like teeth. If you think about teeth, when they have braces, and in order to move the teeth, the braces are put on for a long period of time and these teeth slowly move. If we use dynamic motion to the teeth, they're just gonna, if we wobble the teeth, they're just gonna fall out. So fascia is a little bit like teeth. It's really dense and it requires that passive, gentle, unraveling, slow stretches. So again, Lizzie's just got a very classic sleeping swan. You can see her right foot is a little bit underneath that. Her left foot is a little bit underneath the right hip. She feels nice and comfortable. The most important thing in this pose is not to get it into your knee joint. So you really want to protect your knee joint. And actually, the safest way to have your knee is actually exactly like how Elaine has it at right angles. So her knee is like that. And this is putting the least amount of rotation on your knee. So we don't want to rotate the knee joint, and that serves as bringing the least amount of rotation onto the knee. They all look very comfortable. So we're staying in this pose, in this sleeping swan, for 4 minutes on each side. It's a really nice pose to really land into the back of our hips. Can get really tight from sitting down, and it's really nice to just unravel them, taking a little bit of time. In yin, most of our body is on the floor, so it's a very nourishing and a very grounding practice. We get a lot of our energy from the floor. So in yin, there's a stillness, and we're trying to find the motion, the movement in the stillness, finding the inhale and the exhale, and really tapping into the natural rhythms of the body, heartbeat, breath, and then the natural rhythms of life, so night and day, the seasons, and then harnessing the energy of nature. Okay, now really slowly coming out of that pose. And we're going to move directly into a half saddle. So half saddle is a little bit more complicated pose to set up. It requires a lot of internal rotation. So I'm going to bring a bolster and I'm going to set Javier up first. So you're going to bring that block down. So Javier is going to use some bolsters. Is that okay for you? So the idea about half saddle is to get a nice stretch through the front of the left thigh. So we're getting a stretch through here. You can do it on your back, and then you can have this right leg out. So sometimes it's really nice to bend this right knee. So you're just going to bend that right knee and come like that. And that can really help. Does that make you feel better or not? Yeah. Do you prefer it straight or bent? The leg straight or bent?
Yeah, straight.
Straight. So sometimes it's nice to bend out. Javier prefers it straight. And you're getting a nice stretch through here. Bolsters are really, really nice in this pose. It takes a lot of internal rotation in the front of the left hip to be able to come all the way down. So now we're going to move on to Elaine. Can you just demonstrate a front saddle as well? On the front. You go on your front and you bend your knee back. So Elaine's just going to quickly demonstrate, and one option for half saddle. You can come onto your front, so you can come into a prone position and you can bend your left foot and then take the left foot. So this is a really nice alternative. Sometimes half saddle can get into the lower back, sometimes it can get into the knees, and you can lie like this. If you want more of a stretch in this pose on the front, you can also bring a block underneath that left foot. How does that feel, Elaine?
That's fine.
Good. And then you don't have to, you can bring your ear to the mat if that feels better as well. Okay, so Lizzie is going to do a full saddle, right? So Lizzie's got a lot of internal rotation, so she finds coming down in full saddle really easy, and this is the best way that she can get a stretch. I'm also going to use a block here and bring it. Do you want it like that one? So Lizzie, in order to get a stretch in half saddle, comes into full saddle, so both legs back, and then she also takes a block underneath her pelvis to bring her pelvis up. So she's now getting a stretch through both of her quads. So half saddle is about getting a stretch through both quads. So front of the thighs, we have 4 quadricep muscles. You can also maybe feel it a little bit in the front of the left hip as well. So one of the quad muscles, the rectus femoris, is also a hip flexor, and so you might get it a little bit up into the front of the hip, so you might feel it a little bit up through there as well. So this is a nice opening up of the whole of the front of the body, and particularly targeting the quadricep muscles. Okay, and now we're going to really slowly come out and come onto the other side. So we're staying 3 minutes in half saddle on each side. Lizzie's going to stay in full saddle because she's very comfortable there, aren't you? And Elaine's going to move over, Javier's going to move over and come into the other side. So sometimes, I'm just going to give Javier as an example, sometimes you might in half saddle have a really, get a real pain in your foot. So you need to bring something underneath your ankle joint. So you need to raise your ankle joint. So this just means as you come back, is that better? It's kind of good to get a towel or something to roll something underneath and bring it underneath your, so you need to bring it right underneath your ankle rather than your foot, because you don't have the ability to point your foot so much and the ankle is getting in the way, so you get compression in the back of your ankle. So you want to bring something underneath which lifts the ankle joint up, and then your foot is a little bit more comfortable, and it can be more comfortable like that. Again, always you have the option, I show this because I really like this option, of bending that left knee out and feeling the stretch through there, or you can have that right leg straight, which is that your preference? Yeah. So I'm always looking, when I'm teaching, is always looking for people's preference, and you're never really going to know a person's preference unless you talk to them, unless you create a dialogue, because I can look at somebody's body, but I need to know, I need to speak to them and see which they prefer, if they're still feeling the stretch in the right area. And that's just what really yin is about. So it's very much about creating a dialogue. It's very much about the exploration of different people's bodies to find what really works. I know these students quite well, so I kind of know what they're familiar with and their preferences, but new students, you definitely need to talk to them. So half saddle, you're still working on the front line of the body, so you're still opening up through the stomach and spleen meridian. Aiding with digestion. And then stomach and spleen is also about you need to stop one after this one, don't you? So stomach and spleen is also about the mental aspect on stomach and spleen is creating a calmness and a groundedness as well. So on the other side of that is anxiety. So an indication of spleen and stomach being out of balance is that we might overthink things. So there's a thought that goes round and round in your head. So overthinking, overanalyzing, and then that creates anxiety. So things like these poses can be really, really grounding. They can really calm your nervous system down, and they can really calm your thoughts down. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do in yoga. We're trying to create a little bit more space, not only in the body, but also in our mind, create a little bit more space in between those thoughts. So you're going to really slowly come out of that pose and come back to lie back onto your mat. So straight away come back into lie back onto the mat. Take that. And so last kind of hip opener, we're going to move into a banana. So banana is a really simple pose. Let's move over to that side first. So you're going to move your feet over, and then arms over your head, and then just curving the right way. So banana is a really nice pose to open up through the back of the left hip and open up through the top of the sacrum. This is a really nice stretch to the whole of the left side of the body, so you're getting a really nice lateral stretch to the body, and depending on the student, you're going to feel it in slightly different places. So where are you feeling it, Elaine? Going to feel it in the thing? Yeah, so she's feeling it through the sideways here. Lizzie, where are you feeling it? Or sideways here as well. So it's a really nice stretch to the top of the left hip, and it's kind of the back of the top of the left hip that really is nice to get to here. It's the QL muscle, the quadratus laborum muscle, which is really nice to stretch out. That's used in a lot of hip extension, so bending the leg back, and a lot of back bends, and it can get really nice and tight, so it's a really nice opening through here. You're also stretching down through the that whole left side of the body. And you can also sometimes feel it into the IT band, so that iliotibial band, which is a really thick band of fascia. So the IT band wraps all the way around your leg, and it's particularly heavily layered on the lateral side. So this can also create a nice stretch through here. And then also with this pose, so you're getting a nice stretch through the left side, but you're also getting a nice flat lateral flexion through the right side. So you're coming a little bit into compression onto the right side, so your spine is flexing onto the right side, and that also is creating a nice little compression of the intervertebral discs in your spine. So intervertebral discs in between each vertebrae of the spine. And that helps to inflate and hydrate these intervertebral discs. So intervertebral discs need to be hydrated and inflated. The nucleus, the center of the discs, can become really easily dehydrated. And you notice that, the older we get, we shrink. At the end of the day, we're a little bit shorter than we were at the beginning because the discs have been a little bit dehydrated. So long-term benefit of compression of the discs, lateral flexion, back bends, forward folds, is that the discs become a little bit more inflated. The nucleus of the discs become nice and round and bulbous, and they protect the spine, they protect the spinal column, and they also absorb a lot of shock. And now really slowly we're going to move over to the other side. So just 3 minutes on that side and 3 minutes on the other side. So again, you can choose to hook your right ankle over. Get a nice stretch through the right side now. So where we've gently compressed into the right side, you're now stretching through the right side. And you can play a little bit with banana. So you can either bring your arms a little bit over more to the right, and you don't have to move your feet over to the left so much. So if you move your upper body, I'm just going to move your upper body a little bit more. So if you move your upper body and bring your legs back, then you'll probably get it a little bit more into the upper bit of the body. And then if you move your legs, you'll probably get it down into the lower bit of your body. So you can have a little play, and you can target the stretch into a slightly different area. So Lizzie, I'm going to move your feet a lot more, and you just maybe feel it down. Do you get it more down into the legs? So again, with banana, we're working on the seams of the body, so the sides of the body, working, opening up energy through the liver meridian. So the energy of spring. Mental energy is all about direction, about vision, about planning, where we can see ourselves, where we want to go. And then it's the emotion of anger. So often we think as anger as a negative emotion, but actually can be the prelude to change. So if we are angry or frustrated or exasperated, then often that is the precursor to change, to creating something new and different in our lives. And that's the energy of the liver, of spring, of creativity, of change, of vision, of moving forward. So it's the idea of moving forward. It's connected to the eyes, to the sense of the eyes. So it's about seeing. And now really slowly you're going to come back into center and you're going to make your way into your final relaxation. So it's really important to set yourself up really comfortably for final relaxation. You can have the option of bringing a bolster underneath your knees so that if you have anything going on with your lower back, that can be a really nice option. And then it's really nice also to have an eye bag. So I'm going to put some eye bags on the students so they feel very comfortable. And then just make sure you bring your feet nice and wide, so bring your feet wide. And then just allow your feet to flop out. And do Lizzie or Javier, do you want a bolster underneath your knees?
That was lovely.
So a bolster just really helps to sink the sacrum down onto the floor. And now really slowly just beginning to wriggle your fingers and your toes. Coming really slowly out of your final relaxation, bringing your arms over your head and giving yourself a really nice big stretch. And then hug your knees into your chest. And then dropping your knees over to the left side, so I'd like to come into the inside. And then just resting a few moments in fetal. And then slowly making your way up into a comfortable seated position. So we're just going to finish our practice. Comfortable seated position. Elaine likes to come into a kneeling position because cross-legged doesn't really work for her. You can come into a very Padmasana, or you can just come into a nice comfortable seated position. Do you want to block underneath your pelvis? And then bringing your hands together and just taking a moment with your eyes closed. And then raising your thumb knuckles to the center of your forehead. Namaste.